Morning, everyone. We are live. Now, let's just check who's here. Carnival Club, present, the earliest one. And J Ducky's here as well. Oops, oops, oops. It's 1 a.m. for me. Bring it on, mate. Bring it on. Don't stay too long. Get to sleep. You can always watch this tomorrow. And there is the latest stream, the Eurasia one, so you can actually jump onto that. I'll stay up as long as possible for King of Taurine. Bloody hell, guys. Some of you guys are incredible. Akmal, how are you, mate? If drinking warm or hot water always instead of room temperature water, any positive or negative effects in the body? Thank you. Nah, not really. Um, I mean, it seems like warm water helps with digestion uh, a bit more, but it's neither here or there. These are minor things, so a lot of people argue about them, but they are very minor things. God, this is new. I hardly get any super chats. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And a super sticker from Andrew. Thank you very much, Andrew. Oh, what a lovely green little blot. Nice and bouncy. Appreciate it. Thank you. Both of you, Todd and Andrew. Deborah, good morning to you as well. Yeah. So yeah, not much to worry about. It's not going to have any strange effects or stuff like that. Definitely, if you're actually doing you haven't had a lot of hydration in you for a little while, I would definitely go for warmer or room temperature water, not for cold water, because you'll notice it in your esophagus. You will cause a bit of inflammation to your esophagus if you do that. It won't last. It's not like it's just you will notice it. And Carnival Club, will we ever get a steak and egg song from Uncle Harry? No. Go to the ball, man. That's his little trick. That's his little musical thing. Mine's Taurine. Taurine, Taurine, Taurine. So, yes. He's the musical one. I'm not the musical one. Remember, he plays guitar and sings and all that. So he's the more musical one. God, if I had to basically sing really quality stuff to save myself, I'd be dead. So yes, while I can sprout a few tunes here or there or stuff like that, I'm out of sync. I don't have that gift, but way better in that department, and other people as well. But I suspect if you've done something for a very long time in your life and trained yourself, Mum was a really great singer. But yes, my youngest sister has that down pat. My older sister, not too bad, but yeah, I'm just like my old man, just completely uncoordinated at the vocal area. Right. Is there any significance to our stomach acidity and eating cooked meat or other carnivore mammals eat their meat raw and have a higher stomach pH? Well, we actually have one of the lowest pHs, which is about 1 to 1.5. So, and the reason for that is why we have high, where other animals, even other carnivores, are usually around about 3.5. You can still get acidity at those levels, but they also require uh, more of, the way they extract things and all that is a bit different. I don't want to give away because I've actually done a video on this that's going to come out on Wednesday, and I don't want to give too much away because I'm going to cover a lot of points in regards to raw meat benefits for certain groups of people and why. That's why I don't want to give too much away at this point. But obviously, the acidity thing seems to allow certain people with eating raw at a slightly different acidity level to do much better than cooked. It's marginal, but it is noticed amongst people that are plant-based in particular. But I'm not going to go into it. Sorry about this, Deborah. I've profusely answered a lot of commentary in the last, day and a half in particular on this subject matter, and people arguing with me and me explaining why they are wrong. So had to correct a lot of people with their misunderstandings and misapprehensions and whatever else. So I'm not going to say too much. Some of this will be covered, but obviously, cooked is going to affect the gelatinous material inside the actual meat. So those collagen sort of fibers and all that. So it sort of, what is it called? Gelatinization. I think it's called gelatinizing. So when you actually cook something, you break down those, collagen type fibers, and you make it easier for digestion to happen in the actual stomach. So cooked meat will allow you to extract more compared to in terms of amino acids. Because remember, we don't absorb foreign proteins that would give us an autoimmune sort of effect. We extract simple sugars, fatty, simple fats, broken down to the different fatty acids that exist, and simple amino acids. And then all that goes into our body, and then we have our own enzymes that rebuild according to our genetics, the exact cellular structures and machinery that we require. So we take the raw parts, once these are broken down, and then utilize them enzymatically or biochemically to basically construct the stuff that we require for our proper functioning, determined by our genes. As the bald man would say, all by the genes. How to construct or transcript using scientific lingo, but we'll just use simple stuff on this live stream. How to put together your enzymes, your different protein transporters, which are polypeptides, which is just a string of aminos. That's what a polypeptide is. So that's the sort of stuff. Anyway, let's move on. Larry, Johnny, how are you, mate? Reset for 3-day fast. Yeah, a wet fast, 3-day wet fast will actually do a reset. With the actual dry fasting, I think you have to, even though autophagy gets to those good levels, but to clear out a number of the damaged senescent immune cells seems to take at least 48 hours. Even if you're doing a dry fast, you definitely need about 2 days to really do a proper reset. Yeah. Not everything works the same. When we talk about, the general immune reset, yeah, for a wet 3 days, definitely 72 hours, and that's when we get the highest level of autophagy. you can actually achieve that within 24 to 36 hours on a dry fast. But to get a really good clean out of the damaged senescent immune cells, it usually takes about 2 days. So, yeah, does what it does. Nutrient advice for stroke patients. Should taurine be priority? Absolutely. Red blood perfusion, when you get a blockage and then blood rushes back in and you get a lot of oxidative stress that actually happens, the thing that actually mitigates that is taurine if it's already in the system. If you put it after, it will actually reduce the fibrosis caused and the amount of damage caused. So, yep, definitely indicated. Obviously, start with about 3 grams. I usually start people much lower, but when these sort of conditions are, people are already suffering, so a bit of discomfort, the benefit outweighs the discomfort. 3, then sit for a couple of days, then get them up to 6, and for a couple of more days, and if as long as they can tolerate it, get them all the way up to 12 to really to work. Now, obviously, lithium, if they're on metformin, lithium, blood pressure meds, and all that, there's problems with those. They lower all those things, and so does taurine. So one has to go. So the blood pressure meds, the blood sugar lowering medication, the lithium. Now the lithium is a bit more tricky because you have to go slower on that. It sucks to be you. If you're on lithium, you've got to bring it down slower and increase taurine slower. Just is what it is because it's affecting similar pathways. So we have to be way more careful on that front. This is not medical advice. Let me make that quite clear. You do it at your own risk. But yeah, you cannot put taurine in together with medications that lower blood sugar, lower blood pressure, or affect the GABA, pathway within the brain, just to make things complete. Invite winning idea. How are you? My close friend was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Well, that's awful. I told her to take taurine, calcium glutarate, and what else can help? Well, they need to make sure because in the prostate, and which is not her case, and in the breast tissue, the key vitamin that is required to regulate the collagen degrading enzymes and also the cell proliferative enzymes, the ones that, for turnover of cellular stuff, is vitamin D. She needs to fix her vitamin D status ASAP. That may mean also that she may need to go and do injectable to get her levels up faster. So, and check those levels as well. The other cofactor is retinol. So eggs, things like eggs, which are, like 6 eggs a day, really good to get your vitamin A up, your retinol, because it is a secondary cofactor and required for those enzymes to work. And your need for both those fat-soluble vitamins goes up with both prostate and breast cancer. So just to be complete for everyone in that regard. Plus, I would look at the Physatin stuff and how to amplify it at night in that regard. Blue blocking glasses, especially these type for the night to keep the blue light down and the melatonin up at the same time as you're taking Physatin to get a synergistic effect of 680%. So massive amplification of killing off cancer and killing off senescent cells, damaged cells, that is. So I would go through my cancer playlist and get a lot of information out of that as well. So anyway, most databases say that tello, blah, 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 but a lot of it is not measured. A lot of those are not measured, and you'll actually find little gaps. Obviously, in the fat of animals, you also have carotenoids. Less retinol, more carotenoids because they're getting it from the grass, especially the grass-fed. So if it's grass-fed, it's going to have more carotenoids. And then how good a converter are you? And if you've been, you've got like, British Isles type genetics and Icelandic, West Coast Norwegian, you're going to have poorer abilities to convert retinols. Carotenoids. So that can be an issue. So it depends on your circumstances. I don't know your background or your genetics. So you need to keep that in mind. So potentially a Rosita cod liver oil is an option as well. So that's going to be lowering copper. It's not going to have the copper issue. You're going to get some vitamin D, but you will get, um, a bit more. But as I said, never go over. Uh, Stick to around about what I do is with retinol about 3,000 IUs, sometimes a bit more, 4,000 IUs. I never go over. My maximum is about 5. Um, but I stick to about most of the time about 3.5, and it's usually from eggs and a number of dairy and a number of other sources. Sometimes I can be a bit lower than that. It varies depending on my circumstances. I never go above 5,000 I use on the vitamin D unless I'm down with a cold or something like that, and I just want to boost my levels slightly to bring them back to normal, and that's only through the winter and the beginning of the first 2 weeks of spring and the last week of autumn, and that is when the UV is much lower, starting to drop. That's when I do it at that regard. Otherwise, I just get it naturally out there. You can get up to 20,000 IUs if you're out in the sun for quite some time, but that's fine because it's a water soluble, it's sulfated. So it's vitamin D sulfate. So it's water soluble, get excreted out of the kidneys. Only a small amount gets stored. So there are physiological ranges of storage, physiological ranges of intake, and sometimes people can go overboard. So being under slightly, if you're healthy, uh, or being just slightly over, if you're healthy, not an issue. Excessively in one direction or the other in the extremes, that's when you start getting problems. So people get overly concerned about, am I getting enough? Calm down. The stress will probably kill you before, slight low or slight above. Yeah, you can occasionally, I sometimes have once every fortnight, once every week, it depends, goose or chicken liver pate. So I get a bit from there, but I don't overdo it on the vitamin A. If I get a cold, I'll definitely, if I'm like feeling like I'm going to get a cold, I'll definitely, because it helps with the immune system, both vitamin A and vitamin D. I'll pretty much um, get some pate and have that. So, but if I'm fine, I'll just keep to the normal ranges. Because if you're not using it, you're storing it, is what happens. So you don't need it excessively. Even tribal people just cut a bit of liver, just like a multivitamin, and occasionally have it here and there, a couple of times a week. But it's only a small amount, just a slither, because they have to share it amongst everyone. So it's not like, and they vary how much they do it as well. Different tribes for their own reasons, but doesn't seem to make much difference between them to a larger part. So they say that lard is one of the best sources of vitamin D. Why does it have more than tallow? Have you checked pig skin? That should tell you everything. It's very similar to ours. So they actually produce. It's a different. All the other animals is like on the hair follicles, and then that's why they use the hair follicles for vitamin D supplements from the sheep. Those hair follicles, and it runs down into the base of it, from the hairline down to the follicles, is what I meant to say. Said it the wrong way around. It doesn't go out, it comes in. So that's like dogs, cats, and all that. Cats actually have to lick it. They lick it off their hair, you know. But anyway, that's a side issue. Where with pigs, a bit like us, in the skin, in the, so that's why it has far more. Simple as that. It's not complicated. So piggy is a better sauce. Love your piggy. What do I? What do I promote? Ruminant meat, pig paws. I want my dog to be healthy. Talk to it. Tell it, I want you to be healthy. Be rude about it. Anyway, look, as long as you're feeding it some decent food, animal foods, you give it a bit of organs occasionally. Hearts are pretty good. I know Pim gives her dogs quite a lot of hearts. Hearts are very good, high in taurine. Um, so it helps the dogs, in particular cats. I say to people, if you've got a cat, why aren't you feeding it hearts? Why the hell aren't you feeding it hearts? So it's because even raw meat isn't freshly slaughtered like the cat would eat. So it's actually been hanging there for a couple of weeks, losing a lot of its fluids, so reducing the amount of taurine. So actually cooking will lose less taurine compared to hanging something up for weeks. That's a problem. And so if you're using even that sort of meat, with dogs, less of a problem because they can synthesize far more than even us. They do much better in synthesizing. But there are other nutrients in hearts which are helpful for them as well, like coenzyme Q10 and many other things. So that's an advantage but for the cat, it's critical. So you know, but yes. Move on. Like the stream, or Harry will confiscate all your taurine. True. I'll send Ted around. He'll do it. Don't tempt me. Ted will sort you taurine lovers out. Hit the like button, or else Ted will come one night with his bucket. Anyway, let's move on. My dog, Dalmatian. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, taurine. Sorry. I would actually give the dog a bit more because taurine actually lowers excess hyperurinemia, or whatever it's called. Probably haven't butchered that with my dyslexic sort of capacity. Yeah, those dogs definitely have that issue. So, yeah. So that's one way of actually bringing it down. Uh, I know a friend of mine actually used to put a bit of lemon juice on the meat. Don't ask me what. Probably wanting to for the stones, but yeah, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So I probably don't think it's a good thing, but it was only when it had stones. But yeah, don't ask me. People do strange things. So, but I haven't looked into it. I know that taurine does lower excess uric acid levels, especially when people have genetics, and it's the E. What is it? something with SL something 9. I just can't remember the actual gene now. Anyway, move on. Well, that's the problem about, a lot of the breeding methods. Small pool. You've got a small group of dogs you're actually manipulating. Small pools, bigger problem. We had a lot of wolves that we converted to dogs. That's why the dogs that are closest to the wolf, like German Shepherd and all that, have less problems unless they are further bred. So, yeah, there is a bit of truth on that front. Um, Paul Mason mentioned a study in his video. People divided in 3 groups: coconut oil, butter, olive oil. When butter dropped, coconut oil, great to have. Exploration, LDL went up. Butter group and dropped in the coconut, and olive group to have. Your explanation. I've already done a video on this. I've covered this. I criticised Paul in regards to, I'm not sure whether it was this video, but a study that he actually showed, or that he misread some of the stuff in it. If I think did I see Scotty? He knows the video that I'm talking about. If Scotty's here, can you please just pop it in? If yeah, Scotty's there. G'day, Scotty. I thought I saw you. Yeah, so uh, it's pretty much, thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, so that'll actually explain, you know, how it actually all works. So these ones, because of the plant compounds that are in there, I want you to watch the video, so I won't say any more. Go and watch it. Go and enjoy it. Oh, I think I covered that. Make sure your vitamin D levels are good. If they're not, why aren't they? Why aren't you getting out in the sun and enjoying the beautiful sun? Go and check the video. Stop asking those questions. God, can't even get people to watch videos nowadays. And people tell them what, they try and answer stuff, and let alone those little nasty, yeah. But the other thing that Isidoro, that's in those plant sterols. As you said, it's those ones, and I've covered that. And also, the nasty thing about them is if you get too many of those, your vascular tree, they're really thin blood vessels. Especially women have that problem more than men. Guess what? You get hypoxia, damage to that tissue, because you know, even if the blood vessel is thin, the artery is thin, the red blood vessel is actually able to elongate through that, change shape, and go and flow through. But you put a lot of sterols in that and stiffens it up. It's not like cholesterol that can actually is flexible. So where do you want you to get your stuff from? Plants or animals? To be able to move those red blood cells through smoothly and effortlessly. Yes, that's another reason you should avoid plants if you don't want to create hypoxia in certain areas of your body. Not a good thing. Anyway, love the background. Oh, thank you. Yes, I thought I'll go for the 3D effect today. Just to outdo Ted with his adjusting knobs in Kiwi land. Yeah, Ted, innovation, mate, innovation, 3D. Get with a program. Good evening, or good morning in my case, but good evening to you. Dragon, good to have you here. And Scotty. Any suggestions in idiopathic intestinal lung fibrosis beyond vitamin D and taurine? Yeah, make sure your retinol intake is within the normal range in that regard. It does take a bit of time when it comes to fibrosis. I had like glassing in my left lung, completely like at 90%. Doctor was scared about cancer, but that was a year after my, it's now, what is it, 13 plus years. It's about a year after when I was 45, because I was 44, and 45, I had a test that showed a severe glassing. Then from there all the way to, let me just, how many years? You know, you've got cellular turnover. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm just trying to work out approximately 22. So it took me about 8 years to get it from about 90% all the way down to 15%. It's probably cleared it completely now because I notice I've actually, even back in 2019 when I did the last test, I don't want to put myself through a radiation again. I know that it's cleared up because I'm actually fitter now jogging up the stairs from the ground floor to the ninth floor or from the basement. I do the round in the building. Yeah, I know. I'm the weirdo that actually jogs up and down the stairs in the office. So yeah, and I get up to the top, and I just I'm where before even 2019, I still had a bit of that sort of panting a bit, but now it's really very very little in that regard. And if I walk, there's none. It's like I'm walking flat. So obviously it's probably sorted itself out. And it was just, eating sensibly, eating the proper animal foods, making sure my vitamin D levels are up in the higher normal range continuously throughout the year, and having good levels of taurine. I used to be on 12 grams of taurine through that whole period. Now I've dropped back to about, 3 to 6, depends. Sometimes 4. It's usually in the evening for the melatonin effect. Yeah. So, and if I have any in the morning, that's when it goes to 6, when I'll have 2, and then I'll have 4 later. And it's usually if I'm going to do some training or whatever. But if I'm not, then I don't bother. I'll probably have, you know, 3 or 4 um, in the early evening. So it's the way that I do it. John, how are you, mate? Do you think coffee is just helping with bile flow because the liver is trying to flush it out? Don't know. I've never really. I know that it's a toxin. The coffee's a toxin, just like alcohol. Probably not as bad as alcohol, and the quantity you're taking in is very small. So yeah, it is very high oxalate, but the quantity you're taking is very small, so you're not going to get much. It does have higher niacin than many other plants, so you do. But again, because of the small quantity, you don't get much niacin anyway, so it doesn't make much difference. But on a per gram basis, it does. But if you consume that amount, you'll get oxalate, you'll get a whole lot of other things, and far too much caffeine as well. Uh, so pretty much, it's neither here or there. There's some anecdotes that it sort of helps, and there's some, associated data that actually indicates that. But no, I haven't actually looked into. There may be some experimental stuff. I haven't looked into it to really give you a good question. Oh yes, the song Taurine, Taurine, Taurine. Yeah, that's as bad as it gets. Doesn't get any better, boys and girls. So, Jolly, why does adding salt to water soothe a sore throat? Um, I actually knew this, I just can't remember it. Has to do also with the warm water. That does help in that regard, but it affects the sodium, the because it's a solute, the warm water seems to change some of the characteristics of the solute of the actual salt, and it seems to on the receptor sites in the actual throat that do have there are a number of sodium channels that are, and they do seem to respond to that sort of relaxing effect. So you know, it's a bit like when people don't have enough salt or salt deprived, you get higher um, adrenaline and noradrenaline that actually happens. You know, and especially you get people with. I find that people that have got the methylation comp genes, um, if they have poor salt status, they tend to have much more. They notice much more relief when they put quite a bit of salt in. So yeah, I think it has something to do with the way it actually responds with those channels, but I can't remember all of it. It's a long time ago that I looked into it. Oh, Harry, how did you start learning about biochemistry and biophysics? Just looking into it. Where should one begin learning it? I think if I was to say anything, is before you actually look into biochemistry or biophysics, learn to think from a systems point of view. Learn to think like an engineer. Don't learn to think like a biochemist. Don't learn to think like a biophysicist. They are all reductionists in their thinking. You will get more confused and you'll end up just spouting out pathways, reductionist pathways, and making no sense. You'll sound intelligent, but you won't be intelligent. Just because you can blurt out, oh, this pathway, enzymatic pathway, or this one does this, this, and this. That's not intelligence. Intelligence is understanding the interplay within a system of all these processes. And if I eat this or do this or that or whatever, these things, exercise, this will go up, that, or, that will be affected, do this or that. That is understanding the dynamic system. When you have a systems understanding of things and you look at things from a systems perspective, then you'll be able to understand biochemistry and biophysics and all the different pathways, how they interplay and work. You'll have much deeper insights into understanding physiology than you will just reading blindly biochemistry books and biophysics books, which is what most people do in academia. It's just, the sort of industrial model of just brainwashing you to remember, to memorize, like a parrot, all these pathways. You know, you're not going to learn that way. You'll be able to spout out a lot of things, but you won't understand them in a deep way. To understand deep way, and this is why they can't even explain them simplistically. I can't explain things simplistically, how they interplay and how they work, because I understand them. You got to understand something. You need to be able to understand how it works, how a system works. It's understanding just the parts won't tell you how the system works. And this is why everybody gets it wrong. They make such horrendous mistakes in terms of the way they understand physiology. You'll actually see that video on Monday on the gallbladder that'll actually cover that and all that. You'll understand why people make reductionist, stupid arguments and mistakes in their thinking. It's like the LDLC. Just because the fireman is at the fire doesn't mean the fireman caused the fire. Just because LDL is at the scene doesn't mean LDL caused it. You have to do an experiment to show cause and effect. Just because there's an association doesn't mean F all. And the problem is these people have this tendency, if this does this, but why does it do it? We know that this pathway does that, but why the hell does it do it? Do people ask that question? You can only ask that question, understand that question deep and meaningful if you understand from a systems perspective stuff. I say that the best way to basically make people smart in academia is to force them to do in their first year of university a number of subjects in engineering to learn how to analyze systems, and the second to do philosophy and logic. If they did that and had an understanding of, philosophy, metaphysics, and logic, and applied those things, they would actually be greater scientists in their field because they would be able to be lateral thinkers outside the box and stuff like that. Our current crop are just basically drones, industrial drones. That's all they are. They just spout things out as industrial drones. Even the AIs that we create, we say, expert smart systems. Bullshit. Dumb ideas and dumb concepts inside, and they'll give you dumb rubbish out. They're as smart as the stuff you put into them. No different than humans. Got it? So, yeah, anyway, there's my little rant for the day. I've had a rant. Oh, God. I feel much better, Nathan. Yes, some of our super friends. Jeremy, I cut out all dairy in 45. My BPH has gone. Good for you. Some people respond better. Some people don't. Depends. There's a lot of factors. It's a complicated discussion. I'd be here for an hour trying to explain all the nuances in regards to dairy. I have made a few videos covering dairy, but I will make on many other things as well. And I will elucidate, which means explain, why a lot of these other things happen. Yes, J Ducky, no to 15-minute gulags. Yes, that should be our slogan. Paste it everywhere. Create your own T-shirts. Okay. Made it. Good, Darkfield. Good to have you here. I was debating a Vagoon on Facebook, and they constantly spout meat has no vitamin C. Well, what do you say? See, the thing is, what most people don't understand is, why do you need vitamin C? Let's just get to the crux of the matter. Why do we need vitamin C in large amounts, as the RDI says? Because most people can't get enough. Their GLUT4 receptor is prioritizing glucose. Very little vitamin C gets in. Very little. For us, that's not the case. We're using GLUT1 receptor at a basal level. So any little excess that we do from exercise or whatever that the brain doesn't use or the red blood cells don't use or whatever, it doesn't need insulin. It'll just flow into the via the GLUT1 receptor out of the system back to homeostasis once you stop exercising, which has pushed up gluconeogenesis for a while. So that's how we get it, which means the receptor, GLUT4, completely left alone. And we know it works. We know that in the middle meat, there's not a lot in terms of the actual, scorbate, But there is, because we take it in and put it in our cells. What do you think all the other animals do? They're eating grass and all that. What do you think they're putting in their cells? Vitamin C as well. Okay? So it is there. It is bound in a certain way, and there is speculation that it could be up to 1,000 times more bioavailable than the plant one that has not been proven experimentally. I'm still trying to find things. It's a very hazy area of research, but the only anecdote that we have, the high quality anecdote, is that we've got people that had scurvy. We know that the sailors that had access to meat didn't have scurvy. The ones that didn't have access to meat, had all the, like the non-officers, did get scurvy. On the other hand, and they were just, this is sort of like a racist within the British, we're aristocracy, we've got better, we're genetically superior. That's why it doesn't happen to us. That was their sort of attitude. That's how ridiculous it got. But what do you expect? They were having meat, the other ones weren't. They couldn't put two together? No, they couldn't. That's how, when people are in their own little brainwashed, narrow thinking, this is a human condition, you can't think outside the box. You're not going to see the obvious in many cases. But like with vitamin C, what did Napoleon do? He slaughtered a whole lot of horses, fed his troops meat, scurvy went away. Now, the other thing is, why do we need... No, Lewis, do not supplement. You'll end up with a lot of oxalate. Excess vitamin C gets turned into oxalate. Not a good thing. That's why. If not, why not? That's exactly why not. The other thing is, why do we need vitamin C? We need to basically synthesize hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. These are peptides, okay? Now, when we break down protein, we can actually release these peptides as well, not just amino acids, but also these peptides. As hydroxyproline from that gelatinous collagen structure within the meat, and hydroxylysine as well. So they can actually cross that middle part of the small intestine where primarily they do go through. So we can get those. We don't have to synthesize them. So when you're eating animal foods, the flesh of animals, we get more than enough of the hydroxyproline, the hydroxylysine, so we don't have to synthesize it. Plus, the small amount that we get of vitamin C is more than enough for the other biological requirements, plus a bit of synthesis. Problem solved. Okay? It's only on a plant-based diet you may not be getting enough. And from the plant proteins, you have to take proline and lysine and synthesize it. You don't have to do that. The same thing goes if you're taking protein supplements. Those peptides are not going to be there. So if you're doing a carnivore diet, you're not eating a lot of meat and taking a lot of these collagen supplements where these peptides are not present, guess what? You could cause yourself low-grade scurvy. I think one of those actors did as well, who was doing protein. He was doing carnivore, which was bullshit because he was doing a whole lot of protein supplements. He wasn't doing a lot of meat because he said he didn't like it. But the reality is he was claiming to be doing carnivore, whatever, and as a consequence caused himself this sort of low grade from what he says. But we didn't see anything because scurvy is quite clear. You'll see it in your face, you'll see it in your skin, you'll see all the outbreaks. So he claimed something that was never medically proven anyway. So I think it was just bullshit. Just another, pony out there trying to make a name, or you know what? Uh, how can I put it? The um, problem with people is they have a need especially the clowns that you'll find in the media, in sort of reporters, um, people like that, sort of actors, musicians, you know, their life has to be one bloody drama after another. You know, if it's not drama, it's and it's they're either getting divorced continuously or um, just one thing after another. So, what do you say about them? Anyway, back to what we were saying. So, yeah, so we can get enough vitamin C, and we can get from the meat these polypeptides that we require anyway, so we don't have to synthesize as much. So there's a whole lot of reasons why we don't have the same requirements. And the biggest problem with the carb eaters is they just can't get enough. Especially diabetics. Diabetics actually do get scurvy. What, they don't get enough carbohydrates to synthesize? Apparently, we can actually produce all the sugar we require for gluconeogenesis to provide that as well for the synthesis of vitamin C. That, which is what they talk, or the sort of the thing that they're talking about, and all that sort of crap that they're talking about, that we need both and all that. There's a whole lot of crazy talk out there about vitamin C, but it's all nonsense. um, we don't do any of that. We don't require we do not use vitamin C as our key antioxidant. Our key antioxidant is uric acid. Okay, urate to be more precise. Otherwise, the bald man will get upset on the other side of the pond. Urate, to be more precise. So yeah, it's just nonsense, peddled and all that. Yeah, I usually just say, and where do you get, Vagoon, your hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine? And they look at you like they're stunned mullets. And you go, well, don't you understand the question? Well, it seems you're ignorant about the subject then, aren't you? So you shouldn't be actually arguing a point which you're ignorant about. I like to slap them a bit verbally. Let's move on. Any advice? Reverse pneumonia. Um, a species appropriate diet would help. Obviously, having a good vitamin D status is incredibly important. And this is definitely not medical advice. And if you've got pneumonia, I hope you're at the hospital. So now, if you've got some damage from pneumonia, that's a different thing. Then taurine's going to play a big role, but also regulating the collagen degrading enzymes means that you must maintain a good status of vitamin D and A, because they are the two key cofactors for the enzymes, the matrix metalloproteinases, the MMPs as we call them, that are generated out of the liver primarily, that turn over and regulate collagen turnover inside even our organs, not only other tissue like bones and things like that. So really important to make sure that they are at a good level. So sometimes people, I'll say go and get Rosita cod liver oil. So yeah, this brand, which I trust to bring your levels up a bit faster without taking in too much copper heavy foods like liver. You can have liver once a week, but small amounts, but like an ounce or two. But I wouldn't actually be doing it on a regular basis. So that is the product, and yeah. Anyway, Harry. Yes, yes, yes. It all already has been done. Yes, Mr. Smith, already has been done. We will discuss this later. Rumiko, how are you? Electrolyte supplements such as LMNT, okay for a carnivore diet? Nah, not required. You know, there are some cases where, if you're extremely physically active, you're losing a lot of fluids and stuff like that. Yeah, potentially. But regular people, no. If you're not, and as long as you're not drinking too much excessive water, which you don't because we hydrate from our own body fat and the fat that we eat, we create metabolic water. So as long as you're not overhydrating, just drinking a bit, getting a bit of taurine, which regulates that, eating enough protein to hold on to, just to bump slightly up the insulin through the day to maintain that insulin to glucagon ratio of 1.3 to 1. If it drops below 1.1, it tends to basically, it's too close to the sort of the catabolic state of fasting, which is 0.9 to 1. And then you'll start dumping, you're losing electrolytes. That's why on a very low ketogenic, high fat, low protein, you end up being, 1.1 to 1. It's just too low, not enough insulin signaling to hold on to electrolytes. So once you get to eating more protein animal, the flesh of animals, you bump that up to about 1.3 to 1.5 to 1, depending on how many animal foods. So if you're eating a bit more dairy and all that, will actually, especially dairy that's got a bit of, like cheese and stuff like that, it'll bump it a bit even higher into that 1.4, 1.5 or whatever. So these things help in actually regulating your electrolytes within your own fluids of your body. So the body's been doing it for a very long time, Rebecca. So no, you don't. Most people do not need. If you're doing, as I said, excessive exercise and stuff like that, it can be useful. But you can actually bump up slightly your sodium intake slightly, and to offset that slightly. And the other thing that I do is when I exercise, to allow me to exercise longer. For two reasons. One, it actually protects the muscles a bit better, taurine. Plus, it reduces lactate levels, forcing them through. So pyruvate dehydrogenase, forcing them through there into acetyl-CoA, so smack into the Krebs cycle. So preventing lactate to be created that goes back to the liver to get repurposed for glucose or glycogen. So I keep my lactate levels down by using taurine on an empty stomach before exercising for that reason. So it's a manipulation in that regard. Yeah. And the vasodilation effect of a bit of L-citrulline as well. Yeah, so I'd rather do that sort of stuff than, electrolytes. Anyway, I haven't had electrolytes for, God, I can't even remember the last time. What are your natural alternatives to shampoo, conditioner, soap, toothpaste? I'll do a video. I'll do a video on it. That's probably the best thing. I don't use the regular stuff, but I'll have to do a video to cover all the aspects, and I'll just show you what I actually use. I actually use soap, and it's goat soap based. It doesn't have any of the nasty stuff, and I use that for both my hair, this stuff, which is it's actually growing a bit, isn't it? Yeah. Fuck, it's actually growing faster than the last time. I have to cut back on those sulfurs. And the meat. It's growing too fast. Oh, just let Georgie know that it's growing too fast. It'll upset him even more. Georgie Blink Off, one of our lovely Ray Pete friends. Yeah, but I'll definitely do a video. Yes. Oh, actually, also, if you do know Georgie as well, tell him to watch the gallbladder video. If it doesn't blow his mind, I don't know what will. He may just go carnivore if he watches that video. I'm not kidding you. That's how good it is. You will know when you see it. You'll be, yes. I do have 2 other follow-on videos after that in regards to all that subject matter, to nuance things a bit further as well in that regard, to blow Georgie's mind even further apart. And Daddy Robbie's little, so his little pecker will basically go into high oscillation, probably do him some good. Oh, our dear AP friends. You gotta love them. How about his fluoride? Not a good thing. Halogen, like all halogens, not a good thing. We need trace amounts of fluoride. We don't need massive amounts creating disturbances or taking up receptor sites for iodine in the thyroid. Not a good thing. Get the fluoride out. That's why I have deuterium-depleted water, spring water from high elevations, which is 136 ppm. And you can taste the trace minerals in that. Mm. Yes, like that's where I get my trace minerals. You can practically hear the taurine. Yes, it's creaking all over the place. Uh, yes, yes, yes. Not nice stuff. Not nice stuff. Good industrial waste. It'll let through anything, apparently. I don't know am I allowed to say that or is it censored? Apparently, you two people. You don't know what to say nowadays. It's become Mike, how are you? Hmm. Like on, you're like on eggshells in YouTube land nowadays. Like on eggshells, Should I say that or shouldn't I? Or maybe I should reword it in this way. Well, forgot my coffee, my poison for the day. Ah, nice poison. Tastes nice. Probably poison does taste nice. Uh, feel a bit not needed. Yeah, just yeah. Don't please don't take it. Don't need it. You know, give it to somebody who may want to use it for cooking, who's on a carb-centric diet. I tried 5 grams of no discomfort at all. People react differently. I know Mark K. He struggles. He had to go all the way back to I think half a gram or a gram, and slowly build up. Oh, I think he only does about 3 grams. He doesn't do a lot. He knows the benefits are there, but his sulfur tolerance is much lower. He can't tolerate eggs as well, so he occasionally does, but it does cause him a lot of, let's say, digestive distress. Not a lot, but like flatulence and stuff like that. Where I don't get any of that. But so some people are more sulfur sensitive than others. Um, I've always said if you're really sulfur sensitive and you've got cancer and you require taurine, or you've got fibrosis and stuff like that, then one way of methylating it or reducing it is using basically, is pretty much using taurine for that sort of purpose. Sorry, choline for that sort of purpose. Choline. So And that's the other thing is with, I think somebody on Bart's channel, I don't see them, don't see them here. They haven't actually, anybody asked about Compt or or CBS? No, I can't see anyone having actually asked, which is most people know about MTH are far about, and I've already discussed about them, how riboflavin corrects the actual that enzyme, the enzymatic pathway with, especially, CBS, it actually can overuse SAMI, because usually what you've got is methionine, SAMI, which is for a whole lot of biological processes, and CBS tends to use a bit too much of that, and also has a problem where it's like a, but it's like this secondary methylate methyl this secondary pathway to convert via the methionine cycle homocysteine back to methionine. But if you've got this gene that is not working very well, then you're going to have more homocysteine in the system. Choline fixes that because it directly spares folate, because there's a folate cycle over here. It's not exactly, we call it a cycle, but it's, all these enzymes connected, and anyway. But we simplified, called reductionism. So when it comes to the folate cycle, it really requires key things like folate, B12, and B6. Now, all those water-soluble vitamins have other biological effects in the body as well. So if you've got high homocysteine, you're actually, especially on it, this is why vegans go, because usually you have to be below 7, and most SAD dieters are about 12 to 15. Most vegetarians are 17 to 19, and vegans usually tend to be about 20 odd to all the way up to 27. They've got extremely high homocysteine levels. That's why it's so unhealthy long term doing veganism. And that's why they supplement heavily all these sort of things to try and deal with these problems. So when it comes to choline, which we can get from eggs, we can get from meat and all that, can actually come directly. We also get a bit of betaine, comes directly, gets converted to betaine, and directly that comes into the methionine cycle and will facilitate in that conversion to methionine. Now, the other one that many people don't know about, which is the CBS one, that also is involved in taurine synthesis and glutathione synthesis and stuff like that. So if that's not working properly, your taurine synthesis levels and your glutathione levels are going to be lower. Glutathione being one of your key intracellular antioxidants. That means the stuff that your own body produces as an antioxidant, powerful one. It also recycles vitamin C and vitamin E inside the body, or the E complex. It's tocotrienols and all the other ones, which are shorter and different shaped and sizes and penetrating in tissue at different layers. And anyway, we won't go into the details. But so it's really, really important, I say to people, that if you've got these things, to know exactly. That's why you may need to supplement a bit of taurine to deal with that genetic anomaly that you may have. Anyway, Nikki, have long-term radiation and chemo side effects, scarring my voice box, which is constantly degrading, and dietary and amino combinations work well to stabilize and reverse scarring damage. Yep. Taurine plays a big role in reversing a lot of scar tissue, so it plays a big role in the body. Also, had you known, taurine is actually what is called, what you get is chemo resistance. A lot of people get, or radiation, or in particular chemo resistance, but also radiation resistance. And you get a lot of damage to normal cells as well. So it's not the most optimal approach. It's sort of like a sledgehammer approach. They can take out some cancer cells, but also can do a lot of damage as well. This is not medical advice. I can't tell you what to do or when to do it or what or whatever. If I was in your boat, I'd be doing a lot of the other stuff that I do, strengthening my immune system, which radiation and chemotherapy do weaken. And what has been found in research is this chemo resistance, in particular, but also radiation resistance. There, you can use iodine for your thyroid, but on the other hand, for the general body, is taurine, because taurine will reduce the oxidative stress in the normal stuff. It will protect the normal ones from that senescent type thing, but it will actually increase the apoptotic effect against the cancer cells. It actually put the cancer cells and senescent ones under higher stress to be killed off. So it works synergistically. That's why it's considered that taurine can overcome chemo resistance, and resistance works, and chemo works better in combination with taurine. There's research out there, but most oncologists are completely and utterly ignorant to this day. Absolutely ignorant. If anyway, I won't have another. I have had my earlier rant for today, Nikki. I can't overdo it. I do have to control myself. Behave, bad boy. Carotenoids convert her retinol. Oh, thank you for telling me that. Oops. Studies show that not subscribing to Harry's channel results in early death. True, true. And a visit from Ted. Just remember that. And he's not as nice as I am, especially when he turns up with his bucket. You've been warned. Toto, Toto. Yeah. Nice nickname. I'm reaching out to clarify something about taurine since it's senolytic. I'm wondering. It doesn't work exactly like a senolytic, unless you're talking about Physatin. Yeah, which is because it works as a signaling molecule for apoptosis. So it's not working in the same way as a senolytic would be, like a polyphenol. So it does have senolytic effects, but it's not senolytic. It's actually apoptotic effects. So we need to use the right terminology. Sorry, I'm not trying to be I understand you don't understand all the. Anyway, wondering if it's necessary to use hit and run strategy at Physatin. Yep, you wouldn't use it every day because it does have an effect on your physiology. Like, it can actually suppress mTOR, and you don't want that because you need it for your muscles and collagen structures. You need it for your muscle skeletal structure. You need a certain level of mTOR activation. You don't want to be interfering with that with this polyphenol. Okay, so polyphenols have their upside, have their downsides as well. They can cause other derangements in the body. So they need to be used specifically. So I usually say to people, if you're old and you've got more senescent cells, and you look in the mirror and you definitely have more senescent cells, then doing it once a month, 3 days, 20 milligrams per kilo of body weight. What does that translate to pounds? Give me a sec. Put incorrectly. So per pound, that would be 9.1 milligrams. So 9 9.09 to be more precise, or 9.1 milligrams per pound of body weight, and 20 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So that's how it's sorted in terms of the Pfizer. And I usually say to people, take it at night, 9 o'clock. That's when your melatonin should be the highest and you get the biggest bang for your bucks. Take it with cream. Okay. For the fruitarians out there that don't want to pay the cost of buying these supplements, the highest source in anything of Phytotin is strawberries. The problem with strawberries is you have to get organic ones because they do take in a lot of pesticides, a lot of contaminants that's in the fluids. That's the biggest problem with strawberries. Where with the compared to everything else, it's really low. Strawberries are like that, just massive quantity. So strawberries and cream. Oh, there you go. Put on your partner's body and anyway, we won't go into details. So you know what I mean. So in that regard, you can get my Toto mate. You can get sort of a more stronger senolytic effect. So I usually take taurine to increase. So on that day, I'll actually dose myself up to about 6 grams in the early evening in order to push to assist, even though I'm actually using these things to lower my blue light exposure and cortisol levels at night, together with a taurine that lowers cortisol and amplifies it, helps with the synthesis of more melatonin. Then I throw the senolytic with my cream. Yeah, very creamy. And I get a bigger kill rate, theoretically 680%. Lock and load! Anyway, is there any truth to that cold makes you sick? No. Otherwise, Eskimo, sorry, Inuit, sorry, YouTube, Inuit would be sick all day, every day. But colds can weaken the body in another way if you are already sick. So you want to be a bit not too hot, but not too cold as well. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, excessive cold for a prolonged period of time is unhealthy, as excessive heat is as well. Oh, how do you choose between niacin and citrulline for vasodilation? Stick to citrulline. Niacin isn't a good idea to take in high amounts anyway. I only take about from half a tablet. I've dropped it down to about once or twice a week. To about 125 milligrams, and it's pharmaceutical grade, so it's TGA approved. Like the Fed in America, same thing. So it's made the dose is exactly what it says on the label, 250 milligrams, and I split it in half. So I do not believe you should be doing high doses of niacin. Why? It interferes with gluconeogenesis. It interferes with a number of pathways. Not a good thing. Okay? That's why. So my maximum is about 300, but I usually don't even do that. Nowadays, I usually stick to around about, at most, my normal stuff that I'm getting from food, and occasionally up to 125 milligrams just to get that additional sort of, give my body a bit extra. It stays in the system for a couple of days, so just give it a bit of extra. That's the only reason. But all the other stuff's just nonsense. Lowering cholesterol, really? No thanks. I'll let the body regulate how much and when and whatever, and I won't interfere with gluconeogenesis either. There's a lot of pathways with gluconeogenesis people don't know. And they also don't know how much gives free energy. That's biophysics. That most crackpots out there have got no idea. But that's for a future video. And you'll understand why gluconeogenesis is much less taxing to the system compared to even glycolysis. Yes, but for a future video. Yeah, so we'll have to send that to the Ray Pete fan club as well, just to basically bring them up to scratch in terms of biophysics, which they have no idea about, you know. God, it's going to take a long time to teach them even quantum biology. God, I'll probably have a seizure at that stage with that group. Let alone, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, we've got the aspirin thing as well, because they're really popular about the aspirin. Yes, I'll have to do that video soon as well, just to annoy them even more on that issue. But I will give them a solution. There is a solution that an academic in I think he's Swiss or German, I can't remember now, that did a bit of research on dealing with aspirin usage. We need to help them out. It's the sort of humanitarian thing on my side to my lovely and loving repeat fan club. Oh, God, they say I'm not a humanitarian. How dare they? My Greta moment. Anyway, I am on carnivore diet drinking purely reverse osmosis water with no added minerals or electrolytes. Aren't you? And using Celtic salt. Oh, I should have read the rest of it. It tastes on food. Should I consider electrolyte trace mineral supplements? Not really. If maybe. In your case, mate, can't you actually? For the reverse osmosis water, you can get a trace mineral supplement for it, but you have to go for a good quality one, not the crap. The other thing is to go for for a trace mineral. So you may have to. So there's a number of quality ones around. But at the end of the day, we're still getting plenty of trace minerals through the food. If you're eating enough meat, you should technically get sufficient. You know, in the past, before I used this stuff, which I buy, I get shipped over from Melbourne, so I don't buy it online because the problem is each time I try and actually find it online, I can't find it. It's just frustrating. There's not enough on Amazon. There's not enough on many of the other sites. It's on and off. It's never, where the guy that's actually in Melbourne, you know, he'll just send it over. I'll just, get, I think I have to buy 4 or 6 boxes in quantity. So it is pricey. So I get them shipped over. And yeah, that's how I do it. But you can go into the store where then you don't have to pay the postage and handling, because I have to buy more in order to get the postage and handling free. But my sister's in there, in Melbourne. If she wants to go, she can go. If a cousin of mine wants to go, or a friend of mine, or whoever wants to actually go and buy it, they can do it, or any other person for that matter that knows about it. So they've got that option, and they just go get one box or 2 boxes, which is and I just use it for my coffees primarily. That's all I use it. Coffee, and I only put about that amount of water. The rest is milk. Milk is low deuterium anyway, so I don't have to worry about that. Like all dairy, it's higher than meat fat, Obviously it's in the 120 ppm, and that's from the sugar, but there's not a lot of sugar. The majority of it is, fat. So there's more fat than, so that changes, and the water is deuterium depleted by the animal itself, to some extent. It's not going to be high deuterium like water. It's lower. Not as low as fat, obviously, but when you actually calculate the whole lot, it actually drops into the 120 odd. So it's even lower than milk, is even lower than olive oil, which is 130 at the top end of the normal range. So the only plant that's the lowest, because all the other ones between 145 to 160 ppm, the only plant that's really, really low, or plants group, is legumes. They're about like lentils and stuff like that, about 138. So they are, for some reason, because Laszlo actually talks about, I can't remember exactly, has to do with the position of one of the carbons that actually affects the ability for the deuterium. It'll actually dock in part of that carbon backbone more hydrogens rather than deuterium ions. That's the sort of difference, or the H1 hydrogen, that's just got the proton in the nucleus. So, and tends to be lower in deuterium as a consequence. But legumes have got a lot of anti-nutrients. I mean, you've got to soak them for a week and do a whole lot of things to try and lower the lectins and all the other anti-nutrients. So it's not worth it. Just eat a steak. God, if you want energy for your mitochondria that's low in deuterium, just fat. Particular piggy, which is a great deuterium depleting machine. It is awesome. 150, 115 ppm. Tallow, grass-fed, 118, 119. And grain-fed, 122, 124. Got it? You can feed piggy anything. Grains, crap, excrement. They'll eat anything. Great detox machines. Fantastic detox machines, way better than us. And guess what happens? They still have low deuterium in their fat as a consequence of their just incredible detox and deuterium depleting capacity. Just incredible animal. Yes. So bacon is actually the lowest. Nobody knows why. It seems like that tissue type where they get the bacon from, it's 113. It's even lower than the actual fat itself from the pig, which is 115. And bacon that actually has also the proteins part, which we know protein has high deuterium because you require it for your collagen structures and stuff like that. So it's it's anywhere between 142 to 145. Pork tends to have the fat from pork tends to have slightly more deuterium. The protein from pork has slightly more deuterium than the protein from beef, as an example. In that regard, so there's a bit of difference there, but in the fat, super low, especially bacon. Even though it's got some protein element, so so even the fat there must be lower than 113 for the averaging. Just incredible. Old piggy. Yes. Anyway, let's move on. Christina, how are you? Yes. Yes. Um, could you please consider discussing methylene blue, L-serine, and one of? Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'm not a fan of methylene blue. I'll be honest. You know, there are certain conditions where you get poisoning or whatever, and methylene. I'll do that in the video where methylene blue can be useful. Higher levels of methylene blue in the system in healthy people, I think, can be problematic. But people that have got specific mitochondrial conditions and all that. It can be like a crutch, but it's not fixing the problem. It's just a crutch. It's like I'm taking something, you know, you can get it electron doning from other things as well without the side effects. Methylene blue is not the only electron donor. There are other things you can use. But I'll go into that into a video, and that's my reasons why, but that future video, probably next month or the month after when I get a chance. I do have a whole raft of other things that I've got programmed for this month and next month. And I do want to get through those because there's been a lot that has to do with a lot of the issues that people always bring up. And this is not a big issue as far as I'm concerned. It's a side issue, for people that are in the sort of alternative space, which, my main frontal assault is on my lovely, dear and loving friends from the Repeat Fan Club and the Vaguna Rice community. I have plenty to say about those lovely people. And so my focus is on that and focus on certain medical conditions as well. So, but when I do get a chance, I will look into some of this more esoteric stuff that, anyway. Question into calculus, a form of oxalate dumping. There is an association with it, but there's also certain type of bacteria that also like oxalate for some reason, that do reside in the oral biome. I am investigating some of that. Look, I don't want to give anything away at the moment because I am going to make a video covering some of this and even covering, certain types of bacterial strains that we can use and some strategies and stuff like that in terms of the oral microbiome. And I don't want to give much away because I do have competition that do watch my videos and I don't want them getting any information until I release it, because then I can say, I told you, and all they can do is just, quote me as an example, because most people don't do the prolific level of you notice me, I usually I'll do a whole lot of videos, and then you won't see much videos from me for a while because I'm away studying like mad, trying to work out a whole lot of pathways. And I may be looking at 3 or 4 studies simultaneously. I used to read like 7 books in a week together, concurrently. I know, yeah. And even though I used to play soccer and, I wasn't just a bookworm, I was very physical. And I used to go and train at a mate's place, weightlifting as well. So I'm both, and in the Greek culture, it's a bit like that. It's normal to be both a jock and a nerd at the same time. The normal stupid connotations that people use, but being basically a smart jock in a sense. But yeah, that's how I operate as a person, but I will cover this area of the oral microbiome, and I have a lot to say about a lot of things and a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of things that people say that are really, really wrong, and why they're wrong. So I've got, let's say, a few things to say in that regard. It's a bit like, with the repeat and their reductionism, and, in the dentistry sort of area, there are a whole lot of issues as well. But as I said, I'll leave that for a video. I tend to basically sidestep these because I want to make videos. And if I say too much, things that I usually will say are things that I've already said. So, and I've already covered. And then I don't really care because it's already out there. You already know. And there's a video that I can point to, which you sometimes get. Whoever of my moderators is here, hardly any today. What the hell? Where are they? Sleeping? You people could say practically anything, but at least you're civilized, unlike the repeat people and the vagoons who are completely uncivilized. Did I say that out loud? Oops. That was a personal opinion, my dear friends at YouTube here. just a personal opinion. No, no criticisms of those lovely two communities. Uh, can you help me understand fat protein ratios? Here's 80-20 around 25. I'm not. What I usually say to people, people can use it like the kilocalorie one, which is that sort of approach, and um, that that people use, or they can use the 1 to 1 gram between fat and protein, so 1 gram fat. It's a rough thing, but I don't approach things like that. I usually nowadays say to people, that's a rough thing for most people. But if you're basically trying to, depends what you're doing. So around 2 grams, I usually do about 2.2 grams, sometimes a bit less. I may do 1.9, sometimes I may do 2.4. It's around 2 to 2.2 is and that is pretty much for the people on the pounds, on the metric system bigots. It's pretty much zero 0.9 to 1 grams per pound is usually what I look at. And if somebody's a bit more physically active, I tell them to go a bit higher, like close to the 3. If they are really, really like Jonathan, really doing high-end competition, it's usually between 3, 3.5 to 4. But you have to be at that sort of level. But most people, if they're very sedentary, like ultra couch potatoes, 1.8 in that regard. So it depends on both your activity level. I have some activity level. That's why I'm at the 2 to 2.2. And I also think that a bit higher than 1.8, even if you're a bit on the sedentary side, about 2 would be much better, because as we get older, as well, we need a bit more. We're doing a bit more repair, a bit more stuff. We need a bit more material. That's sort of the reasoning behind it. And some of the data seems to indicate you need a bit more. So that's that part of the angle. And then you play around with you make sure that at least you're getting sufficient fat to satiety. If you're not getting fat to satiety, then you're going to have some derangements over time. So if you're feeling satisfied, fine. A lot of the meats sometimes that people, I'm sort of lucky that I live in Tasmania and I can access meats that are fattier. In some other parts, it's much harder. They trim a lot off. And I usually say to those people, well, add a bit of dairy fat, like butter, on top of your steak or whatever. Or do a few, like I know some people will cook a steak and then cook some bacon on the side and have that as well to get a bit of extra fat in that regard, and play around with that and see where your levels are, where how you feel. So the requirements, because of activity level and all that, can vary. So you need to play around. Now, if you want specific stuff for a specific, like coaching and exercise regime, go and see Jonathan. He'll do you, because I don't do consultancies. I've got a day job. I don't do this sort of stuff. I don't have the time, So, I used to do a bit. I was burning the candle at both ends. I don't need that extra money, so I don't really care. And a lot of it was being done for free, and it just was exhausting me. It was just too much. So I jettisoned that completely, and I've sort of outsourced it. So for addictions to PIM, if you don't know who PIM is, have you been living under a rock or something? So if you go into the channels that I support on the front page of my channel, you'll actually see Pim Johnson, So you go to her for addiction things and stuff like that. She's pretty good. I've done some videos with her on deuterium and, and other health related issues that she's concerned with weight loss and with addictions and stuff like that. So we've covered a lot of those sort of things. But as a generalist, he's a sports physiologist and also a cardio, as a physiologist in everything to do with the cardiovascular system. He's actually, as an academic, he trained upcoming doctors, student doctors, so to speak. And then you've got people like Jonathan that's really good when it comes to people doing the bodybuilding. He recently, in bodybuilding, actually won competition in the UK. So he knows his shit. He knows how to cut. He knows how to do all that. He knows how to play around with the ratios properly. If you're into that sort of space, bodybuilding and competition, stuff like that. If you're not, you're just a general people, how do you feel? Satiety. Play around, and you'll find your level based on your own sort of physiology. There are variations between people, but get the protein right and then play around with the fat and see. It's usually a 1-to-1, but play around with it, and usually you'll find your best spot. Is what I usually say to people. And if you want to, lose a bit of weight, you can bump up the fat a bit and the protein for about a couple of weeks. Try and actually get your, revved up your sort of metabolic system where the body goes, oh shit loads of stuff coming in. I need to basically start oxidizing a lot of this stuff a bit faster. And then after 2 weeks, after you've stuffed yourself, you drop off. You don't drop, you don't want to go into rabbit starvation. You still need a bit of fat, but you drop the fat to about 30% of what you were doing before. So you're getting still enough, add a bit of extra salt to make sure, and some extra water, because that's important, because otherwise you're going to end up with harder stools. You want softer, stools. Because this is what happens when bodybuilders cut fat really when they're doing severe extreme cuts, and they have to take laxatives. So we don't want you doing that. You don't need to, and rapid weight loss is a healthy thing anyway. So that's a different thing that bodybuilders do, so, but for the general people, depends on what you're trying to achieve, what you want to do. Vanities and everything, sometimes people need to understand people have health problems. They may have some sort of pituitary growth, like one carnivore I know that, hasn't told anyone, but can't lose, is getting healthy, but, still got quite a bit of weight, but because of a benign growth, I believe. So there are a lot of people with a lot of different conditions. Don't focus on other people, focus on yourselves. Okay? I'm deuterium depleting, so I'm remaining weight stable, and, so, when I went from obese into overweight, I had, brain fog and all that sort of stuff. And so I've remained weight stable at that lower end. But again, that's because I'm protecting my mitochondria. Everybody's got their reasons why they do things, or how they do them, or how they're adjusting, or whatever. They're on their own journey of health, improving their health. People need to focus on theirs and stop focusing on other people out there. Because I noticed a few questions, and I noticed one of the subs, took one of those out of one of those people that were being annoying in the live stream, not on mine, but on others. So there are idiots that come on deliberately, like repeat people and stuff like that, and they deliberately make a lot of nonsensical stuff. Focus on what works for you. Play around with those macros and what your goals are. You need to work out, what are my goals in health? What am I trying to achieve? And then have an action plan for that sort of stuff. And if you're not certain how to go about it, go and see people that know their shit, like Bart, Jonathan, and Pim. Go and see those people, and they will help sort of guide you in the right way. So that's what you should do for that. For the general population, make sure, based on your activities levels, as I said, get your protein in the right sort of proportionality, and then play around with the fat proportion and see where you're getting the satiety, where you're sort of remaining weight stable. If you're happy with your weight, you want to put a bit more. You may want to, let's say you're really underweight. You're a young person really underweight. You did a veganurized diet and you just stripped away a lot of muscle mass and tissue from your body. Because vegans diets, really, the classical vegan diet is a fasting mimicking diet. It's what monks do. It basically is very catabolic. It just breaks down to, it's not healthy long term, and it's not sustainable and nutritionally deficient. But it does disengage the Randall cycle because you're only on one macro for energy. You're not on both to engage the Randall cycle, especially in high amounts. So, but the thing is, you need to work out what your goals are and play around with those sort of macro, micro nutrients, Matthew. So I hope that provides a lot of information for a lot of people. Focus on your own selves and don't focus on other people, and get it to work. We know what is species appropriate. We don't need to argue this point. It's baked in the bones, collagen, long bones of our ancestors. It's super hyper carnivore. For most of our existence, we existed in a glacial period, not an interglacial period when there were fruit and stuff around. Most of that stuff was underground, waiting in hibernation for the warm periods of the interglacial period. And even then, it only came out in limited amount through certain seasonal periods. And it was very tiny and small, not like the stuff that we've actually grown through domestication and hybridization. The stuff then was miniature. You could fit a watermelon in your palm. Wasn't that big like this, ginormous. It was a little tiny little thing fitted in your palm. And what did you do? I better cut my bloody nails. Friggin' hell, they grow, all these sulfurs, damn bloody sulfurs. And you can see they're very healthy and nice. So, no, I'm not going to go into that. See, ladies, you can get good strong nails and long nails that are healthy on a carnivore diet. Get some meat into your ladies. Anyway, so that's what you need to do. Anyway, I'm rambling again today. What is wrong with me? I've psoriasis since I'm 8 years old, now 29. Do you think the lion diet could help? Thank you. You could give it a try and see what happens and see whether there's something that's actually causing. I know that some people have done the lion diets and actually had worse psoriasis, and others have had improvements. So it's very unclear what is driving that. Now, obviously, psoriasis in the skin is also a problem of too much histamine release. What is actually causing that is a question which needs to be investigated. One thing, niacinamide could either make it like nicotinamide, from niacin. Taking that supplement can either make it worse or better. You try it. If it gets better, fine. If it doesn't, you remove it completely. It's one of those. But the clear sign when people have got skin problems like psoriasis or whatever, I usually ask them the first one thing: what's your vitamin D status? Because you know what psoriasis, any skin lesion is? It's an overactivation of matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs. So the first thing that I'm going to ask you, are you low in vitamin D and retinol? Most of the cases people are on a carnivore diet are getting eating eggs and that. They're getting enough retinol. It's usually vitamin D, the other cofactor. And if you don't have the other cofactor, the enzymes don't get regulated properly. And so some people that have got genetics for psoriasis need to get their vitamin D all the way up to the top of the normal range And I'm not talking about 70 nanograms per milliliter. I'm talking about getting it all the way up to the sort of normal therapeutic range, which is 100. That's how high. And it will switch off these genes. Unless there's some other thing, like an environmental thing that's actually affecting you, like mold or whatever else, it will switch off those genes. It's usually the majority of people, when they go and check their vitamin D, they are shocked how low it is sometimes. So, Frederick, go and get your vitamin D levels checked ASAP, because it may not be your diet, it may be your vitamin D status is too low. So, not everything is sorted by the diet. Vitamin D status is important. And some of the, I don't know, if you're coming from Northern Europe in particular, many people use cod liver oil in the past, cod. And so they would have had, again, their vitamin, they would have got some of their vitamin D from that. They also would have got retinol from that. And, so as I said, in the last 10,000 years, there have been some genetic adaptations to dairy, to retinol, to a lot of things that populations that are what I call domesticated populations, not tribal, have had some alterations to their genetics. It's like the comp ones, like the MTHFR ones, like all these things. You don't find these problems in the tribal people. You do find them in people that have been exposed to civilization over thousands of years and had a number of genetic changes, expressions. So, it sucks to be modern anyway, but that's the reality. You're not tribal anymore. You're not intergenerationally tribal, let alone tribal in your own life. So, yeah, we're not the same, and I don't think the lion diet's going to make much difference. You can give it a try, but we know that matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs, that are primarily produced in the liver via signalling, that's actually happening from the dermis and many other parts. Then, so I would say personally that I'd be very confident that your vitamin D levels aren't optimal. So no, I've heard about it, but I don't know exactly how the technique works. People have different things. Is it like, if you want to actually increase nitric oxide, there's one technique that I heard from one person that you sort of, you make sure you don't breathe out from your nose. You just go, so you're actually pulling in more at the nasal area and then forcing it out through the mouth. And what it's doing is activating certain receptor sites that are increasing nitric oxide in there and increasing dilation in there. So, and that apparently, gets into the body and sort of helps with vasodilation as well. Now I'm going to see a whole lot of people going around sniffing. Just don't do it around other people. They may think you're a sniffer, like Biden. He's a sniffer. Keep away from him. Up syndrome. Did you just get out of bed? Drag yourself out, did you? How are you, mate? Trouble understanding how many grams of protein a day. Oh, we covered that earlier. Yeah, we covered that earlier in that regard. Lean body mass, baby, or would. Look, from your ideal, let's say you were at the ideal, what is it, about 20 body mass index of around about 22. It's not really accurate. Even body mass index for bodybuilders is, it's way out. Like mine, because I'm really muscular, as you can see, 58 years old in September. So body mass index is just ridiculous. It's irrelevant because, it's just I've grown more muscle and I'm still, I've put a few extra kilos, but it's all muscle. So that's really doesn't work. So it's usually about, I think it's about 90%. So lean of overall at the right at 22. I just can't remember so long. It's about either, it's around about four. Oh, that's right. Yeah, now I remember. For Europeans, it's 0.88. For Asians, it's 0.91. 91 or 92? 91, I think. Oh, no. 91, 924 Asians further south. They don't put as much muscle on. That's right. And Asians further north, 0.991. Yeah. So that's a sort of variation. And if you're sort of in Inner Mongolia, it's probably 0.98. They can put on more muscle, not as much as many of the Europeans. It's probably because of the Denisovan genetics that they can put a bit more. We've got a bit more Neanderthal. We can put actually more muscle compared. It's probably why we do so well in bodybuilding competitions and weightlifting. Um, uh, Indo-Europeans, it is. So anyway, I'm just sprouting out numbers and from memory. I haven't looked at these things for a very long time. Let me put it that way. It's all quite wild, but it's yeah. Yep, yep. Your ideal sort of levels in that regard. And as I said, it's about point 88 for Europeans. The Northern Asians about 0.89. That's like Mongolia, those sort of areas. For which isn't much difference. And for the one, they tend to have more Denisovan genes, and the ones that are further south, they have less. They're more like sort of African. So they tend to be, as I said, you're coming down to sort of thinking latitudes now, sort of central China, slightly towards not, yeah, probably the parts of southern China, that sort of band right through, would be about 0.91, Southeast Asia 0.92. So you're going to have, there's less fat stores on people like that closer to the tropics. So it actually, the lean body mass actually goes up, as you can understand, less fat stores, even at the ideal sort of body sort of composition. And it's really due to those environmental adaptations and stuff like that, which is really what it is behind. Uh, anyway, yeah, let's move on. What about low vitamin A? It's almost a year. What should I do after being on a low vitamin A copper diet for almost a year? See no benefit with eyesight and heart, mental health, taking a nosedive. I overdid liver before going zero. Yeah, well, you need to basically just add a few eggs in. Add a few eggs, add a few crustaceans. Now, crustaceans do have a bit more copper, maybe liver once, like an ounce of liver a week, no more, just an ounce. We don't want hypervitaminosis. Even the tribal people, they'll just cut a bit with a knife and just have a bit raw. That's it. They're not basically downing kilos and kilos of liver. Leave that for the cats, the big cats. They eat once and then pretty much sit all day long, especially the lions. So let's not confuse these things. So, yeah, you're probably, because copper's important for collagen structures as well, And eyesight, we know that you make any animal deficient in, and that sometimes some animals won't even actually produce eyes. They'll be not blind. They'll have no eyes or damaged eyes when they're born. They've done the experiments. They know quite clearly you need. But excessive of anything outside the normal physiological range is going to create you health problems. Too low is bad. Too high is bad. It's unfortunately we have a lot of crackpots out there pushing excessive or very low. Or in the past, they, like one, Smith, pushed very high, poisoned his clients, then went to the other extreme, and now he's creating deficiencies. Wrong. And the retinol sort of structure, something coming out of an animal or something coming out of Accutane pills, are not the same. They're not the same, guys. They are different in their structure, slightly. Even that slight difference in structure has a completely different physiological effect in the body. They're not the same. And that's the problem, that people basically say, oh, they're the same. No, they're not. Stop saying that. They're not. That's just bullshit. Get your vitamin A retinol from animal sources. Like eggs are great. You're not going to remember the guy that for decades and decades, he was 88 years old, had no problems. For decades and decades, did 25 eggs on average, which is 24 to 30 eggs a day. Well, that guy was on 3,500 IUs to 4,000, so 3,700, or if he was doing 30 eggs on 4,200 IUs. Okay, I've always said stay below 5 for both vitamin D and vitamin A. And just when you've got a cold, take a bit of cod liver oil. When you don't have a cold, you don't need it. So it's usually in winter. I usually get cod liver. I throw it in the actual fridge, and when I'm a bit under the sun, I'll take it. But I'm not guzzling it down every single. Do what your grandparents did. God, learn something. You've lost your entire food culture and how to use things. That's the problem with modern people. You're all, supermarket addicts. You've basically been brainwashed to be good consumers, not of good ways of eating, but of bad ways of eating, unfortunately, the majority of us. We're all victims, I'm just now being facetious and a bit comical, but, yeah. Well, so we covered, yeah. So yeah, do go back in just consuming few more eggs. That's going to help you. And for the copper side, if you're not getting enough, do consider taking in 1 ounce to 2 ounces of liver a week, and that should help. But if you're doing like 4 eggs, 2 ounces. If you're doing more eggs, just 1 ounce. So depending on, so we don't want to create over time issues either. Storage capacity of retinol and glycogen in the liver is dependent on how healthy the liver is as well. So do remember that. Anyway, ciliary choline indicated in someone with narrow bile ducts. I have heard about narrow bile ducts. I can't even remember what the scientific or the medical syndrome name for it, but yeah, it wouldn't. Taurine and choline aren't going to be a problem for if you've got issues with your bile ducts. They're not. They're going to be helpful, Tegan, over time, but don't go crazy. Remember, also choline we can't take too much. I usually say about 3 grams from all sources, food and if you're trying to fix gallbladder, if you're trying to fix a liver problem, stuff like that. If you're not, eggs and meat are more than enough for all healthy people. They don't need to supplement. But if you've got an underlying condition, your gallbladder, your bile ducts, things are not working properly, then it's indicated to take like 2 grams together with some eggs and stuff like that. You're getting some taurine as well. And over time, it will heal. As I said, my lungs, took 8 years because it's about, it probably happened a bit earlier, but you've got a turnover of all your cells in the body over about 7+ years. Things don't magically, but if you persist and do the right thing by your body, then over time it will get better. Just keep at it. Does it mean anything? Well, if your teeth hurt, I mean, I can actually chew through bones, like chicken bones. So, I don't know how long you've been doing carnivore for. The only thing I can think of is you're maybe one of those poor bastards like this guy, who basically is one of those 24% of people who can't absorb calcium as well. So we need to consume more dairy. Neglecting my coffee. I blame you people now for my coffee going cold. Got to blame somebody. Can't blame myself for everything. God, I am guilty of sunspots. I am guilty of aggravating Ted and a few other things in life. But I've got to blame you guys for something at least. Don't worry, I can I can guzzle down cold coffee anytime. My regular thing at work. Usually get involved too much with my work and forget about my coffee, and I'm always consuming it cold, so I'm used to it. Yeah, so I don't know how long you've been carnivore for. So if it's early days and you've been on a veganurized diet, and because remember, all your bones, including your teeth, are mineralized collagen. So if you haven't been getting sufficient protein in and minerals, especially calcium, because you've got those genetics, which 24% do have. If you actually Google, because it also increases in some people, even though they're not exercising to create gluconeogenesis, it also increases blood sugar levels in the, not high, but it does increase them in carnivores. And they're going, what the hell is happening? I'm not exercising, I'm not doing anything, and my blood sugars are going up. Calcium deficiency will do that. But also, weaker teeth, enamel, structure will be a consequence of not enough of critical minerals that are required plus sufficient protein, plus potentially genetics playing a role as well, plus what your past diet is, plus when you started carnivore, yeah, so many things. But if you Google, or somebody can, anyway, just check there. I do have a video. If you Google my name and calcium, it will come up about blood sugar levels, but it explains the genetics and what that could also be a problem for people who are doing sort of a paleo-esque type carnivore diet. I want to be tribal. Yeah, okay, get the gear and the spear, and we'll send you out there. How many grams of calcium to be actually needed a day do you suppose? I have pastoral genes and all that. Just get it from dairy. Let the body determine how much. Not everybody. I do not recommend calcium supplements. None. Zero. Okay. Now, my father wasn't actually consuming enough sort of dairy and not enough protein and stuff like that. And he's nearly 90 now, and he was undernourished and stuff like that. And 15 years ago, I got him to eat more meat. I gave him also leucine and taurine to amplify protein synthesis, especially in the bones. Yes, teeth, bones. Taurine does wonderful things because it actually amplifies the mTOR receptor and increases the synthesis in those tissue types. So if you want stronger bones, stronger teeth, taurine with meat is going to make a vast difference compared to just meat on itself, especially when we're trying to reverse. Somebody that started as a youngster eating a lot of animal foods, they don't have the problem. We have created weaker bones, weaker muscles and all that through our lifestyle. And so in order to basically accelerate the healing or the repair or getting to where those people are, we need to do a few more things. We need to sort of amplify that effect and push it along. But generally, if you eat more things like cheese and stuff like that, things in the dairy world that have got, and sardines as well, that have got more calcium in them, that's where you should be getting it from, food, and then letting the body regulate how much comes in and stuff like that. Make sure your vitamin D status is good. If your vitamin D status is in the toilet, you need vitamin D to basically bring that calcium in. You need, and having dairy also will give you the menaquinone 4, will give you the K2 component to activate those specific enzymes that basically then put it into the bones, teeth, bones, blah, blah, blah. You're welcome, mate. How often would you recommend adding liver to carny diet? I think I covered that earlier. Very little. Besides taurine and blocking blue light at night, can one do and improve, maintain eyesight? It will improve over time, mate. It will improve. Now, taurine will help reduce the oxidative stress in the eye, which is good. It'll actually also improve a number of other enzymatic pathways that are related to eye health. In that regard, blocking blue light is important. I would also consider cod liver oil, like the Rosita one, which I think I did add the link in there in the description, in the chat somewhere. So the reason for that is because blue light also knocks out, and we're exposed to a lot of blue light. That's why I'm wearing all these things. The yellow stuff lowers it by 70% in the daytime. You need some, and I've got the circadian lights that are basically set to the blue light frequencies, which are identical to or very close to, let me be more precise, more similar to natural light, which I usually turn on about 9ish. So prior to that, I usually have the night stuff if I get up really early. Then after that, I switch to that mid-afternoon, early morning. Then at 9 after until about 3ish in the winter, and then in summer it's about 4:30. Then I'll switch to the other one, and then when it starts, the light is starting to diminish. So dusk, sort of. That's when I'll switch it on to the night one, the afternoon one, and then after that, I will at about close to 9 o'clock. I'll turn off all the other two lights. The one because the dining area is right next to the lounge area. I'll switch completely the lights from there, and it'll be the red light. And my bedroom is also red light as well, and it's not going to have any effect on my melatonin levels at that stage. It's probably the reason why I sleep so well. 5 minutes, I'm out. I just sleep right through for about 7 hours approximately. Sometimes slightly less, 6.5, sometimes 7.5. Depends. If I get a cold or anything like that, if I'm just a bit under the sun or a bit stressed or whatever, I'll sleep 7.5, a bit more. The body just needs more repair time. Anyway, God, quality of this media presentation. Illegitimacy to like helps claims the organ supplements, for example, would taking grass-fed cow's intestinal stomach help digestion, would gallbladder help your gallbladder. There's anecdotes. It could be the placebo effect and have nothing to do. Now, what happens in the body when you take in a substance, any organ, you are going to break everything down to the basic amino acids, fatty acids, and stuff like that. So you're not absorbing any proteins. The most you'll absorb is, as I said earlier, certain polypeptides, which are similar to the sort of polypeptides that we synthesize. So they're not going to have any immune reaction as they're coming into the bloodstream. So non-issue. But there's a lot that we don't know about animal foods. There's a lot of components and substances in animal foods that we don't know about. So we're still researching, and we're finding that they do have some benefits. So there's two takes to it. One take is that the composition of the material of that organ are very similar to our organs. And so it's going to provide additional material. So if I had just a steak, I probably wouldn't get certain of the aminos that are in a kidney or a heart or a liver or whatever. Now, there are some differences in certain composition in terms of the micronutrients. As an example, coenzyme Q10 in hearts and some of the organs is much higher than in the muscle meat. So if I eat some of the organs, I'm going to get certain amount of more coenzyme Q10. If you're in an older age bracket, that can be more useful because you can synthesize less. So it's you can see the differences. This is nuancing. Understand the terminology. So yeah. So in a certain way, yes, in a certain way, if you were if you were to ask somebody basically, they would say, it's just amino acids and fatty acids and all that. Not going to make much difference. But there are other micronutrient compositions which are slightly different. They potentially could have benefits, especially certain things like coenzyme Q10, especially older age when you've actually got underlying some level of inflammation. So they could be quite useful for that purpose as electron donors, especially in the mitochondria as electron, enablers in the electron chain. So, I would say yes, there would be some level of benefit, and there may be other things that we don't know about as well in the organs themselves. Certain variations of certain substances that we're not aware of at this stage. So there is a lot of anecdotal evidence of tribal societies and traditional societies that have used specific organs for specific organ conditions. And it seems to sort of match. But could I say definitively that I've got research that I can prove this? No, I don't, Matthew. Nobody has. But I would say that there is probably some validity to it in that regard. Is it, like some claim, completely the placebo effect? I don't know. None of us do. If we're going to be completely candid, we don't. All we do know is that there seems to be some sort of physiological help there. So take no, unless you need it. Winter is probably a good idea to have it in the fridge available. Have you seen any iron overload on carnivore? Ferritin has been rising since on the diet. Could this be an indication of iron overload? Before was ketovore, ate a lot of more chicken, fish than ferritin low. Look, when you do consume more iron-rich foods in that regard, your ferritin will go up. It's a storage form, nothing to worry about. What I worry is when ferritin is low and transferritin is high. The biggest worry that I have is with transferritin, the transporter, and the transporter high ferritin can mean a lot of things. You may be exposed to mold. You may be exposed to a virus. You may be exposed to a bacteria. You may be exposed to a lot of things. Those things will cause problems, so it is what it is. In that regard. But regulating, if you're getting enough taurine, it will regulate if you're concerned, you can supplement a bit of taurine. It regulates ions, all minerals in the body way better if you're getting enough. So if you're eating enough meat, having some seafood as well will give you that extra taurine, even without supplementing, for seafood is very high in it, and that will help regulate the ions much better in your body. So some people seem to need more than others due to genetics in that regard. So some people also will use a bit more dairy to bring in more non-heme iron rather than heme iron in that regard. But generally speaking, I've seen a lot of people with iron overload genetics normalise. Only a few that tend to have a high ferritin. Ferritin is a storage form, so it doesn't bother me. I don't really worry about it. I worry with transferritin. When that's high, why is it? That's a derangement. Oops. Got 5 minutes. Larry, what do you think about your lithium supplement for mitochondrial health? I'm going to make a video on that. So I'm not going to say anything at this stage, what my opinion on it is. So, as I said, like with the methylene blue, I've made my comments why I don't like it, but I don't like giving away things that I haven't made a video about, you know. Hey, Harry, fellow Greek from London. Oh, okay, you're in London. Yeah, Yasu, you know. Yeah. Ξέρω, απ' την Ελλάδα αν βρίσκεσαι, απ' την Ελλάδα είσαι ή απλώς γεννήθηκες στη Βρυτανία, στο Λονδίνο, θέλω να πω. Εγώ εδώ στη Τασμάνια γεννήθηκα. Αλλά έκανα το γυμνάσιο στην Ελλάδα, στο Αγρίνιο, στα δυτικά. Yeah. Anyway, I just told him a bit about my youth. And that none of you know. Learn Greek to understand what I said. Um, what causes alkaline prostasis risk in carnivores? Mine has been going on the carnivore, wondering if it indicates any problems. Not really. We don't really understand a lot about it. It's associated with a lot of different things, but also it going up has been shown experimentally and through mechanistic studies in the gut in particular, that it actually lowers toll-like receptor 4, which actually suppresses inflammation in the gut. So in the gut, it's actually got a positive effect, which has actually been measured. So it could be just the carnivore diet increases it to lower inflammation in the body. In non-carnivores, it's been associated with all sorts of things. But just because it's in a cancer cell, a normal cell, and whatever, so are many other things in all those cells. It's an association. It doesn't mean causation. It doesn't mean anything. Absolutely nothing in that regard. So it's again, most of the other literature is all associated nonsense. So it's irrelevant. So I can't give you, because I can't access any material and say, here is a definitive study showing that if this expression is in these cell lines or that cell line, that's the effect having on those. All I can tell you is in the gut, it's actually suppressing inflammation via the toll-like receptor 4. So, and I haven't made that video yet either. Why do I give it away? Oh, God. See, you forced me to give away something. Should have just said, I'm going to make a future video of that. I slip sometimes. I slip. But I did give it away earlier to somebody that asked me that question. I'm not sure. Did you ask me that question? Anyway, how much vitamin D would I've already said that 5,000 I use through the winter and early spring, late autumn. Dude, you're asking a lot of reductionist questions all at once. People like to upset me. Do you think having kids your first cousins from your mum's side, okay, different last name would result in birth defect problems? Possibly. Depends on the genetics of the people. Inbreeding isn't a good thing, obviously. But again, if the family doesn't have any, if the family doesn't have any genetic risks in it, so there are none of the actual well-known genetic risks between cousins out there, sickle cell anemia, as an example, and a few other things, then possibly less of a problem. Inbreeding becomes a bigger problem the longer you do it as well. The one-off here or there is going to be less of a problem in that regard. So depends in that regard. Obviously, first cousins are much closer than second or third or beyond that. That is true. But I'm not throwing any aspersions on people or, because a lot of people have done it, and tribal people and all sorts of people in the past. So who am I to criticise people's love? But all I can say is it depends on, what sort of hereditary issues may be on both sides of the family. Or on one side of the family is less of a problem, then the kids just become a carrier. Then it becomes an issue for their kids if they get married to somebody who's a carrier as well of a condition. But for you, for your kids, whether they are at risk depends on what's actually in the two sides of the family. Do they have similar things, issues? So that's where the issue lies, which means that because obviously you're related to just one person, so the first cousin would have like another parent, as the other one would also have. What is that other additional family bringing into the mix of the genetics? So looking at the non-related parent, so to speak, what's their genetics like? So these sort of things. And that is not genetic advice either. My lovely, lovely friends at YouTube here, they get upset with all sorts of things. It's 1 o'clock, and I'm actually calling it a quits. What's the ratio salt, potassium on a carnivore diet? Is it true 4-1 ideal? We don't need a lot of. Go and check my video. I've actually done a video on magnesium, potassium. Potassium, we only excrete 192 milligrams per day. That's it. So as long as you're not guzzling this stuff down to force lower your sodium, because when you lower your sodium, that's when you start dumping magnesium and potassium for maintaining the osmotic balance between the ions, intra and extracellular, which osmolytes like taurine and others regulate. Plus, you need to basically maintain that for electroneutrality within the body. That's the biophysics, which we won't get into. That's what that awful bald man talks about all the time. God. Anyway, back to what and his Les Chatelier's sort of principles. Damn. Yeah, it's all, being wounded up on the side by that little teddy thing. Yes, he whacks you over the head with occasional sprouting out some physics. Anyway, I'm just joking. I'm being facetious. It's at the end of my video, so I can be humorous and a clown, which I like to be. Harry the Clown. He's such a wonderful person sometimes. Yeah, so, yeah, I always say prioritise salt to taste, and usually allow the body to regulate most things. So usually get there. Well, he has a go at me as well over taurine and over being a Tasmanian. We're supposed to be two-headed monsters down here. They just chop the one off when we come out of the birth canal. It's like a rebirth for the mother as well. Apparently, God, hope there's no Tasmanian mothers around at the moment. I'll be chastised. How dare you exposing our Tasmanian secrets? How dare you? Oh. Yes, definitely mango. Definitely. Good to see you here. Yes, yes. What is Jane Ducky again. Pottinger's Human Tube channel has a few videos on gluconeogenesis. Pottinger's YouTube channel. I suspect he has no idea because he doesn't know biophysics, mate. I don't know him actually, but unless he understands biophysics, he's going to have a challenge of explaining it properly. Anyway, it's not only you got to know physics as well. It's not enough just physiology and biochemistry. Our bodies are not just a whole lot of electromagnetic fields in our bodies, and there's all sorts of physiological processes that are happening at the quantum level as well. So I'm about to pull the plug and say goodbye to you. Shots fired, definitely. Like a load, carnies. Yes. Then the studies are wrong. We clearly lose fat and build muscle. Well, time to go, kiddies. I have to prepare myself. Got a few things to do, and then go over to the old boys' place and have a meal. It's probably going to have some nice lamb chops for us. Looking forward to those. Like piggy, thick pieces like that. Pork bacon and all that. And my neighbour, she's pretty good. She came around and gave me a whole bag full of pork crackle. God. So I had a few pieces yesterday, and then I felt guilty having too much, and I stopped, put the rest, zipper in the fridge. So I'll slowly eat it through the week, little bits. I won't overindulge. Yes, I'll try and control my gluttony. Thanks, Johnny, mate. Always a pleasure. Dark-filled. Mango, thank you for being here. You were late. Good to have you here, mate. Thanks as well. And there's Keith. I appreciate from your videos so much from France. Thank you. Well, they say civil players. Okay. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm probably gonna kill the. Are you from the south? Because a lot of the southern, because there used to be Greek colonies in the ancient times. A lot of the southern French have got a bit of Greek blood in them as well. Especially the cities like Marseille, Lyon, and all that. They were Greek cities. Anyway, it's probably the reason why we get along with the French so much. Anyway, we like the French people, us Greeks. Wrong time to ask about the Corey cycle. Yeah, thanks for telling me that. Most of it will forget it anyway. Yes. The critical one is that taurine Isidoro will push it into the Krebs cycle and prevent it going in the other direction from pyruvate into that little cycle and back to the liver. Yep, Harry, I'll try to be back in the Eurasia stream, haha. Yep, see you there. Get your questions in early. Protein to glucose conversion. Far more complicated than you would ever. There are up to 22 pathways, and the level of Gibbs free energy required, there are differences. So, yeah, it's far more gluconeogenesis, or the conversion, or furnishing the body with glucose substrates is far more complicated than most people understand. That's why, as I say, I don't waste my time with the repeat people, is they are so their understanding of physiology. Anyway, I have to go. Thank you for being here. See yous.